to so that auto is stopped. Let's see. Sorry, folks. Yeah, the streaming software crashed there, and so that stopped the live stream for many people. I'm gonna reshare out a new link. This should be going out. This also should still be on Facebook. Meg, if you could make sure that you see this live on Facebook and the other outlets, I'd appreciate it. At any rate, sorry, we left off with Chris. I was about to ask Tim if you had any thoughts around this, around kind of the way that that Politico's the party machine is interacting with this election in specific, and how the results of the election.
Well, as far as the election in New York goes, that's really outside of the area of my expertise. It's very clear that the not establishment candidate won in spite of the Democratic Party. So for them to take any credit for it is fairly disingenuous. When it comes to the party taking credit, for example, for things here in Pennsylvania, because we've had a very good turnout for Democratic candidates. Maybe they get some of that credit, but it's actually strange. Like looking, especially in our general region, I feel like it's not the mainstream Democrats who did any of it, and it sort of forces outside of their control that they would, rather not happen if they can't control them, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. What do you guys see? So, I mean, I posted some predictions on what I think politicos are going to say, what I think the narrative is going to be. I was surprised a little bit by the narrative that the right, like the terminally online MAGA right, chose to go with. I just didn't think that they were gonna go with something so obvious as like we half of them are saying, like, oh, they just voted for Democrats because they're Democrats, and that's most specifically in response to the reelection of Krasner here in Philadelphia. um I just wonder, like, is that more predictable than did I miss something? Is that something that you would expect to hear, or I mean, I know it's not correct. I just wonder, like, where it came from. I'm
I mean, I can't account for where that came from. I mean, anybody who knows anything about politics knows that Krasner won that election when he won the primary.
right.
I mean, you know, Krasner could have died 2 weeks ago. He could have died whatever the day after the cutoff would be for removing his name from the ballot, and his corpse would have gotten more votes than Dugan. So, there's just no other possible explanation that he lost because he was never going to win. Like there's no one to blame but Dugan for running. He signed up to take the beating. He got beat.
Signed up to take the
I mean that's
The ritual
so
sacrifice.
there are some like interesting things you can look at in the outcome of it all though. So
yeah,
I
I did like your point that you made on my post, which was that if you look at the returns on essentially any other party or any other person voting against Krasner, essentially, like voting for somebody other than Krasner, the numbers have been increasing over the course of time.
Yeah, well, I mean that is one thing, but there are other ways to really look at it. So in Philadelphia, we had record turnout, for this off-cycle election. That it's not all the votes are in yet, but it looks like it's going to be something like 375,000 people voted,
Mm-hmm.
which is like a little bit less than 150,000 than the 2021 election. Like that's a massive uptick.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in my opinion, very little, if any, of that has anything to do with Krasner.
Right.
I think that increase in turnout is almost exclusively due to the obscene amount of money that was spent by both sides promoting the Supreme Court retention elections.
I
And
I'll take a little issue with that. I'll counter you that turnout was high literally everywhere. Um, I don't think there was a single like normal low turnout for a year after presidential that I saw. And admittedly, my review of that particular stat was brief this morning, but Virginia, all the districts reporting in Virginia was super high turnout for historical numbers. New York was super high turnout. Like Mamdani won with more votes than uh, any candidate since 2016. Most of the numbers are higher than anything since 2016. Um,
I mean,
and
you have to look at those races and in those states and see what races were taking place. Like traditionally, this is a cycle in Pennsylvania that does not attract much,
right,
if any.
but
I
so
It,
think
it
what
to
it's not it's
I
not the
think what
same.
James is kind of trying to get at is just broadly, nationally, there's a lot more political enthusiasm, especially in an off-cycle election year. And my take on it, I would attribute a lot of that to a lot of political energy is generated negatively. So, like, due to the excuse my language, but utter shit show that our national government is right now, it makes people want to be more
be
politically
involved.
engaged.
Yeah.
Yeah, more politically engaged on every
I mean,
level.
we can
So
toss in your shout out to your friend Noah at this point in Upper Darby, and even Upper Darby
that's
was
excuse me, that's Councilman Noah
Councilman Noah,
Fields. Councilman Noah Fields. Point of
Councilman
Councilman
order.
Noah elect.
Yeah,
Councilman
no,
elect Noah Fields. Yes.
no, I think it's official at this point. But regardless, he will be winning, and he did so in grand fashion. Another race that had I believe record turnout, and he certainly had the most votes for an individual candidate. I think running for any office, but if not
Yeah.
any office, certainly for city council in
No,
Upper
he
Darby.
was
So
compared in the coverage that I read to the election for mayor, and he got more votes than the last couple of elected mayors
yeah, yeah, that is true.
for
Which is impressive in its own right. He's a great guy, very progressive politically, and he really worked really hard to get that victory. Knocking doors, shaking babies, kissing hands, all that good stuff. So congratulations to him, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to shout him out on the pod, bud.
Yeah, no worries. But I think it brings to my point, being and also a point that I think that Mamdani made in one of his videos, whether he made it intentionally or not. He did a video where he had gone out a year ago when he was polling at 1%, and did man on the street interviews on a random corner in Brooklyn. Um, and a year ago, he literally could not get people to stop and talk about politics. And the few people he did get to stop and talk about politics were just expressing that they were disillusioned. And this is just before the election, the 2024 election. So, or 20, yeah, 20, just before the 2024 election in late September of 2024. he's out on a street in New York trying to talk to people about politics and elections, and he's literally not getting any responses. And the responses he does get are that people are frustrated and tired of the same old thing. Um, does this bring does this bring credence to the point that actually I saw some politicos make this point, which is that the election of Trump, the election of Barack Obama, the election of Mamdani, it's all just because they represent a change. It doesn't really matter what change they represent. They represent an effective change, a desire for change, a reaching for something different.
The
Yeah,
Democratic establishment really wants people to believe that. But I don't think it's accurate. When you look at Mamdani in particular, and even like with Noah, I when you look at what's going on, you know, the whole APAC wing of the Democratic Party was against Mamdani. He's a Muslim. He's wants to do all this
Yeah,
heavy
a
duty
bunch of
socialist
lies.
stuff.
Yes.
Right, right. So
yeah. Well,
all of
it's
these
not a
things,
lie that he's Muslim, but
but
He's a radical Muslim anti-Jew, right? Is
yeah,
right,
the all the other stuff, all the other
right,
modifiers.
and he went and he cleaned house anyway,
right.
which has the establishment pissing their pants because part of their narrative, particularly over the past decade, is that you can't be that far left and win.
Mm.
And seeing as how centrists have been losing and how the left has been losing ground following the hold your nose and what choice do you have playbook. Now that Mamdani has sort of done his deal, now the establishment is going to lose that, well, it's either us or Trump narrative. It's either us or MAGA narrative. And so now it's like, no, there's another option. And this particular option is actually talking about doing shit that will make my life better and doing shit on a citizen level as opposed to on a corporate level. And so I think they really want the establishment almost needs people to believe that this is just because people are frustrated and want change as an amorphous idea, as opposed to no, people want this kind of change. People want not we don't want a change from Trump, MAGA, Shitterelli, whatever. We want a change to affordability, transit, childcare, autonomy, that kind of thing.
Tim, you were
Yeah, I
gonna.
think.
Oh, go ahead,
Oh,
Chris.
I was just gonna kind of reaffirm what Rick's saying here. I think you brought up a lot of good points here. I just wanted to kind of tack on too. You know, you talked a lot about the whole like hold your nose, like vote blue no matter who, unless they're to the left of us, in which case they can't win. You know, it's the watching them kind of reel now that they're realizing that like, hey, this isn't just a fad, and it's not just like a thing like you know it's true that people just generally want things to change because things are not good. Like you could even argue a reason why Donald Trump was elected because in people's minds he offered change from the political establishment, which was, I mean, is kind of hilarious in its own right, given that like he's an East Coast Democrat and frankly was a liberal, at least politically affiliated wise for most of his life. But that's not here and there. I'm getting in a little in the weeds. I just think what you're saying about like vote blue no matter who, unless he's to the left, and there's going to be a coming to terms. I think a little bit of like. Well, actually, the people to the left, that's where the real political energy is. It's where the real future of the Democratic Party if it actually wants to win things and not just consolidate its existing power. That's where things are going to need to go.
So interestingly, I think Tim, you represent the on this panel the mythical centrist Republican who all Democratic leadership wants to court. What would work for you?
Well, so I mean, like this guy in New York, he won fair and square in spite of the Democrats, and he won by delivering a message that resonated with people. It's just the truth. I mean, also like let's also be honest, his main opponents, were definitely lacking. Um, so
That's so polite.
Yeah. His main opponents were sex pets, and like actually outside of politics, I actually really like Curtis Lewa. I think he's hilarious. Like I definitely would not mind like hanging out at a bar and listening to him just ramble for hours, but yeah, not
yeah.
necessarily the best or
Needs
most
to be
qualified
nowhere
person to run a
near
city.
power.
Yeah,
I
that's
heard
the
him
one.
No, no,
That's the
I mean,
one.
so
I heard him
no,
described
I
as
mean,
like meaning
I think
well.
we can all agree that when the competition narrowed, it was it was a pretty easy choice for people to make. Like regardless of where you fall on the political spectrum, just in terms of the quality of the candidates being presented and their messaging. Now the only
Quality
thing
of
like
candidates and messaging didn't matter in 2020 or 2016 or 2024 though.
I mean it doesn't, there are times it doesn't. Oh, sorry, one sec. God damn it. But
While we're sort of on the topic of
no,
quality of opposition, can I just take a just a quick second to dunk on Eric Adams for getting 6,000 votes as an incumbent candidate in the largest city in the country? Hilarious.
I think that might be the worst showing ever for an incumbent mayor
It
in New
must
York.
be. It must be.
Yeah. But so anyway, back to the mythical centrist Republican. I wish Mamdani well, and he's made a lot of really bold promises. I don't think it's within his power to deliver on them. But I'm going to reserve judgment, give him a couple of years, and see how he does. And if he can deliver on a meaningful fraction of the things he's promised, he will earn my respect and my support.
Yeah, I so
And
and I think that's very very pragmatic. I think that's also what I would say is your position. If you were in that election, would you have voted for Cuomo or would you have
no,
just
yeah, yeah. I mean, there's like no, like
no?
no, no.
Yeah.
It's,
So
there is a limit.
Would you have voted for Sliwa?
I don't know, man. Those no,
That
probably not.
beret.
I mean,
Yeah,
there
the
was like
hats.
what 6,000, 12,000 probably by the end of the counting. People who voted for Sliva, right? Something like.
Oh, I don't
Yeah,
remember fall offhand.
it's neither of them was going to win. So we have what we have. Well, generally my goal was to stay out of other people's political affairs, but
I'm just I'm just I'm trying to figure out if the person that the heads of the DNC, the people like making these calls actually exist. I don't think that they do, to be perfectly honest. I don't
I do.
I don't think that the person no I don't think that the person that they want to exist actually exists, which is a pragmatic centrist Republican who they can draw onto their side by giving us people like we were talking about it before the show, the winner of the gubernatorial race in Virginia. um so for those that haven't been following this honestly, you know, trouncing of Republicans across the country, um, there is some element of they just voted for the party to this. I think because you don't get results like this um, without there just being a desire to lash out at what is currently in place. But
So did they vote for not Republicans or did they vote for Democrats?
That's what I'm trying to get. Are people are people voting not Republican, or vote blue no matter who, or are they actually looking for what they want and need out of somebody like Mandami?
In
I
Jersey, it's almost entirely voting not for Shitterelli as opposed to voting for Cheryl. In the primary, um, with Steve Phillip and Ross Baraka being, well, Steve Phillip might have been progressive. Ross Baraka was definitely progressive. And Cheryl was the corporatist. And Cheryl is why, and like the political machine is why she won the nomination. People seeing Fulop as not quite trustworthy and Baraka as too far left. And so Cheryl was the safe bet.
But are
And
people seeing Baraka as too far left, or are people wanting what he's offering and the machine is ruling it out?
um I and this goes back to the question that you were asking before about how narrative gets driven. I think people want what he offered. Like when he got a huge bump when he went to the ICE facility and confronted them and got arrested, even though he was the mayor of Newark and had every right to be there and saying, "You're in my city and you don't have your permits." Um, so I think he had what people wanted. The machine absolutely is scared of that. And so the machine funded, supported, propped. I was talking to my son last night. We call Cheryl Kamala Light, and you can do with that all that you want to do with that. Same hairstyle, same stylist, the whole bit. Um, and so the machine said, "This is what we'd prefer because if we latch on to this progressive mayor from Newark, we're cooked." Mamdani proves that that's not true. And I think that if Baraka had won, I think he actually would have won by more points than Sherelle did. And so because of the machine narrative, and it happened like the day of the primary, that the machine came out with the vote blue no matter who bullshit. And there were a whole bunch of people who were like, all right, I don't care. To an extent, I was one of them. It's like, I don't, sure, Mikey won't make things worse. Shitterelli would definitely make things worse. So while we have to have a reckoning and we have to talk about how we got shoehorned yet again into holding our nose, the fact of the matter is the first thing that we have to do is make sure that the Shitterelli guy goes away. Then after that, then we really have to get back to how we got fucked over in being forced to pick this person who we already know has like issues as far as like the trans community, who we already know is okay with not voting on the Immigrant Trust Act, who we already know will put potentially a very needed House of Representatives seat in play if she wins. Um, so it's like there's all these things about Shell that most people in Jersey don't like, but all of those people who didn't vote for her in the primary are like, okay, we will support her because this fucker over here is unacceptable.
Here's the thing, though, and I think the thing that leads to Trump is that we the machine has gotten very good at avoiding that second step, avoiding the second step of the reckoning of, hey, we want a candidate that actually represents what we want and need, not just somebody who's not going to screw our lives up interminably. And by avoiding that, you end up with people like Kamala, who cozies up to Dick Cheney, and posts teary eyed missives about him after he dies. and just it is not anybody wants nobody actually wants that in power. Nobody. I didn't predict her loss. However, I did predict that she wasn't the best candidate for president. That the left could have, that Democrats even could have put up. She's not a liberal. She's not a Democrat. She's not a. She's
She's practically a neocon.
right.
Like I would even say, like it's like you go further than calling her kind of a liberal. I would say she's legitimately conservative in a lot of her positions. And if you look through her career, I mean, she was a literal cop, and a pretty aggressive one at that. Not literal. She was a district attorney or attorney general. I forget, district attorney, right, or
District
attorney
attorney.
general.
She was a district
Yeah,
attorney,
that's right.
and she was very aggressive, and she drove up the prison population, drove up.
She admitted to keeping people in jail for the sake of free labor.
Right.
Like that, like
She would fit in well in the under the Big Tent.
yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying. Like she's like almost more like has the Overton window shifted that significantly that like a George Bush Republican is now a liberal politician in the United States because she happens to be brown?
Well,
Like
Yeah,
according to the
yes, it
Democratic
has.
leadership, yes. According to the
yeah.
Democratic leadership, according to the memo that the Democratic leadership just put out day before yesterday, they need to stop worrying about trans rights. They need to stop worrying about LGBTQ issues. They need to stop worrying about black and DEI and anything that has to do with any sort of civil rights and start sounding more like Republicans.
See, but that's why the Mamdani win scares them so much, because for all of those attempts at justifying corporatism, because that's what all of that narrative does. Um, People have said and shown, no, this is what we actually want. And it's not like he won in Provincetown or Austin. He won in fucking New York City. And so the argument of a progressive can't win on a large scale, and I agree with Tim, a big bonus was the fact that he was running against trash. But nonetheless, with all of the obstacles that he faced, he still won, and he won with an unquestionably progressive message, right? Like it wasn't like he made some tolerable or acceptable promises. Like he was talking about swinging for the fences. Like when you talk about rent controlling in New York City, the people that you're going to have to go up against to pull that off, like that's a big fucking swing.
Oh, God. I don't
So,
know. I don't know if you caught any of his like victory speech he gave late last night when things were kind of made official. But he had a crowd of hundreds, if not thousands, of people screaming out, "Freeze the rent!" It's
right.
like it's almost the same kind of enthusiasm you saw behind Trump, but like not for being terrible human beings. Like instead of chants like "lock her up," they're screaming "Freeze the rent." It's like rhetorically, I've been paying a lot. He kind of does Trump things, but not the stupid part, and not the a misanthropic part, not the just greedy, grifty, brazen, self profit motive driven stuff. He's taking populism back from the right, which is what I feel like is the political strategy that I mean, you should be populist if you're looking at it, in my opinion, in a neutral way, because that means you're for the population of the people. You're for what betters, society as a whole. And it's just for me, it's really nice to see that rhetoric taking hold in such a large scale election like the New York City mayoral race. That's huge.
I don't,
Yeah.
Tim. I don't think you like rent control.
No, no. I mean, I have no problem with rent control, but Mamdani has no legal authority to freeze rent. It's simply outside of his control. The rent control guideline boards in New York is the one who sets rent for rent control departments, and they are legally obligated to increase the prices with inflation. Like it's what they have to do. It's the
Well,
law.
well,
Like
maybe
I mean, you
Mamdani
can
would
change.
maybe
He can't
Mamdani
change
would
the
just do
law as
the other
mayor.
Trump thing and just ignore the law.
I mean, well, then he's going to go up against the landlord interest. Like I have no problem with dreaming big
Hey
if we
man, no war but
acknowledge.
class war.
No, I mean, it's like the big dreams are fine, but like like presenting them as things that are going to happen in short order, instead of the long-term goals that they are, is it's disingenuous. And that's not really a message that I would think is going to resonate more than a couple of times with people if somebody tries to repeat it. Like
You bring up an interesting point, which is one of the things that happens after you have an Obama, or you have even you can see it with Trump, even after his first term, or after a couple of months of this term, you when you have somebody that promises things that are really big, they are somewhat achievable. Like Trump promised to deport people, and he's deporting people in interesting and new ways that aren't necessary, but he's not being successful at it. And so the people that supported him because he said he was going to deport all of the brown people are now like, hey, what's going on? We're not getting enough deportations. You're not protecting
Are they?
America.
Wait, but are they though? Like, I mean, I can only speak to my own kind of anecdotal experience, but like the people that I know that were like Trump supporters and really wanted to get rid of all as many brown people as possible are like, maybe they're in denial, maybe it's just to dunk on the libs or whatever, but like they're running around doing victory laps in their own mind because just because they know that people are suffering, I assume, maybe it's not the number of people that they would like.
I think that there is a zeal for the execution of it, but yeah, like the Stephen Millers of the world are still pissed off because not enough people are being deported. And to go back to my point, you have Obama promising hope and change, these kind of ethereal ideas and these kind of big picture ideas, but hope and change requires, in some ways, generational change to actually get to a point where we're doing stuff that resembles what the populace actually wants from that hope and change. It's not going to happen in a single presidency, even a two-term presidency. So, and then you get the kickback, which is Trump, or which is looking for a new way of changing things. Um, does that happen in New York? I don't know. I think we have to wait and see. I think some of Mandami's goals and aspirations are more achievable than you think they are. But I don't know. I could be wrong. I have no way of quantifying that. Go ahead, Rick.
I
I
mean, that's
think the
that's why I say sorry.
I think the kicker is going to be um intent and attempt.
Hmm.
Um Obama ran on sort of this progressive-ish platform and then got in office and did a whole bunch of other stuff.
Hmm.
Um Trump, for whatever you want to say about him, has a tendency to try to do the things that his handlers told him to promise doing.
Hmm.
Like Trump's never written a piece of legislation in his life.
Hmm.
So everything that comes down the pike that he signs is coming from the people who are telling him what his agenda needs to be.
Rick,
Um,
to be honest with you, I'd be surprised if he ever read a piece of legislation in his life.
oh, he does
He
all the
hasn't.
time. Like they explain to him the executive orders before he signs them, and he goes, "Oh, that's cool." Um,
Oh, Sounds great. Yeah. Like,
Right.
what did he say? Like, literally this week, he pardoned, somebody who was
Yeah.
like
I don't
laundering
know. I
money
don't know
for
him. I don't know
fucking
anything
Al
about him.
Qaeda. Sorry. Oh,
Right.
sorry for
he he
cussing
he,
there.
Um,
he pardoned the head of a digital a funds exchange that was open enough to transactions to allow Al Qaeda and several other terrorist organizations.
Right.
And
Which is why he was in jail. And he was just like, oh, yeah, never heard of the guy. I just signed that piece of
right,
paper.
right.
my
Like,
kids know more about this.
So
yeah.
looking at, but and I have this discussion with people all the time. Like I have a list of like Biden's 2020 campaign promises, and of like the 20 things that he promised, the only thing that he actually accomplished was us rejoining the Paris Accord. But the trick was the things that things like um college tuition for state colleges being free and restoring the Voting Rights Act. There was a whole bunch of things that he promised that he never even tried. And so I think with Mamdani, what a lot of it's going to come down to is yes, you're trying these yes, you're promising these huge things. Are you actually going to work toward them? Or were they just empty campaign promises? And I think whether or not he's successful in dealing with the rent control board, whether or not he's successful in connecting the dots that need to happen in order for public transit to be completely subsidized, which isn't impossible, but it's not a one-step thing. It's like a 15-step thing. But I think what will ultimately decide whether or not people are tolerant and patient and waiting will be how much he works and tries to actually accomplish the things um, that he said, which I, circling back around, I think that's why Trump still gets a lot of support from the people that support him, even though they're still hurting, because he's really trying to do the bullshit that they wanted him to do and that they picked him to do, even though that bullshit is evil and inhumane and un-American.
Um,
Yeah, it's like an A for effort kind of thing, like if he I agree with you on that. Like I think the tolerance for like whether or not he gets viewed positively when it comes time for his reelection by his supporters, I think is largely going to come down to the amount of energy and the amount of work that it's perceived that he puts in. I think anybody with any real political literacy, and even a lot of people who don't like understand a lot of the things that he's talking about doing are not go against what other interests that are very powerful are going to want, and he's gonna come up against a lot of resistance. I think I would like to think people would be a little bit forgiving in the same way that they were, like you're saying for Trump towards Mondami. I think he's got a little bit of grace there to work with
so in
as long as he puts the effort in.
tying this back into Philadelphia, so this is where it becomes interesting to me. Tying this back into Philadelphia, Krasner was on the ballot for what it's worth. As you say, I think this race was had twice because this was the same race that was had in the primaries. Dugan came from the center left, quote unquote. The thing I think that pundits and people from outside of Philadelphia never bother to acknowledge is that Philadelphia does not have multiple parties. We have a bunch of people in the same party, and they don't all have the same goals, and they don't all have the same platform. Our mayor, Cheryl Parker, anywhere else in the entire world would be a conservative. She's not a Democrat. Um, our DA doesn't fit in Democrat either. He's not a Democrat. He's way too into reform. And where the party machine would normally like completely kick him out, they're kind of forced to deal with him here because he got in through a promise of reforming the office and getting rid of corruption, which every resident of Philly knew was here in massive amounts, and he's actually doing it. Um,
Yeah, it's an interesting point too that you're making about like the makeup of the Philadelphia Democratic Party. It's like we've done the uniparty thing, but not like they do it in North Korea. More like how it played out with like the Tower of Babel. Or like, you know, like, does that make sense?
but what I think is interesting about the fact that he was provided, there was anybody who tried to run against him, is that in having Dugan run and provide an alternate choice, you provide a question of how most people see the job he's done thus far. Is he doing an okay job or is he doing a bad job? To Tim's point, he's not doing a great job by any means. He's missing cues from the left and from the right. But he's there's wear and tear on his popularity, as can be seen by the votes for other candidates when he runs, when he's up for re-election. But he's not corrupt. He's not doing things that are major scandals. He's not providing the electorate a reason to get rid of him so much as he's just following his promise, what he intended to do all along, and it's just taking a really long time. So does this translate into the electorate here in Philadelphia is actually analyzing what service and representation they're getting from District Attorney Larry Krasner, or are they just voting party line? Is where I'm going with this. Is the narrative from the suburbs and 6ABC's comment section correct, or are we
No, I
actually?
think no.
Well,
Whatever they're saying, no.
I mean, people are definitely, at least when it comes to the general election, voting the party line. I mean, if you want to see the percentage of people who are really supporting Krasner's policies, you need to look at the primary election, and that is just a really tiny fraction of Philadelphia. I mean, it's not an insignificant amount, but he's not winning even 1 in 10 people in the primary in the city, or even 1 in 10 registered voters. So, I mean, I would say that where it matters in the primary, his supporters are turning out for him and they do believe in him and they're willing to give him time. But in the general election, it is by and large voters just following, I'm going to vote Democrat and supporting Krasner. And if it wasn't, we would see more and more people supporting him in the primary, and we do not.
Yeah, I think the degree to which people feel antipathy towards Larry Krasner, like at least in my experience, if you're somebody who doesn't like Larry Krasner because you don't think he's doing a job, you really don't like I have some people in that I'm friends with on Facebook that uh I work with, and I've seen some pretty I would describe them as emotional responses to Larry Krasner continuing to be the DA of Philadelphia. And I think some of their concerns are valid. I think some of their concerns are more based off of just like the politics of fear, and like how the narrative about how like dangerous and violent in Philadelphia is. I mean, it is if you aren't kind of smart about like where you hang out. I mean, at the same time, you do have your random acts of violence and that type, but it's not like walking around Philadelphia you need to feel unsafe most of the time. And I think a lot of that, the fact that these bad things do happen in Philadelphia, to quote to quote Trump accidentally, I think it a lot of that gets kind of schlepped onto Larry Krasner's plate as if he's like responsible for the existence of crime in kind of a weird way. But I mean, maybe that's just my take on how they're kind of approaching it.
Rick, do you have a, a viewpoint on this?
I always. Um, I, so yeah, so Philly. I mean, I remember back when Wilson Good was mayor and Frank Rizzo wanted to run again, but he couldn't run as a Democrat, and so he switched parties and ran as a Republican. And the faithful to Rizzo and the anti the the racist pockets, right? South Philly at the time, Northeast Philly.
No, still South Philly.
Um, those no, but
Still Northeast Philly too.
Yeah.
those those pockets flocked to Rizzo, um, regardless of his party switch. But even then, the fact that he ran as a Republican actually worked against him. But then he died, which I actually chuckled about. But that's a whole other. I did when I heard he died. I was at a doctor's office, and they said he had a massive coronary, and I said who? They said Frank Rizzo, and I laughed because I'm a bad person. Anyway, um,
I don't think that makes you a bad person at all.
well, I think that I laughed out loud. Anyway,
No, that's
but
fine.
but
I
so
I think I did a little dance.
in Philly, right? Yeah, it's the same thing with Parker. Like the general election is settled at the primary,
Mm,
at the Democratic primary,
hmm.
as a matter. I think that the people who there are people who like what Krasner has done, and who look at what Krasner has done, um, and look at what he's trying to do long term, and who actually come to realize that the city is safer, and come to realize that just throwing people in jail and locking them in jail and throwing away the key and soaking people for cash bail and all of those other things aren't ultimately effective, and that change is necessary and needed. Um, I I think that given it's almost kind of a lack of choice kind of thing. So that has a whole bunch of people that buy-in's the wrong word. Settle for, tolerate, accept.
Stomach.
Yeah, stomach. Sort of what they have to work with. And I think I'm not sure if I think it was Chris who said, or maybe it was you, James, you said haven't given people reason to not like him.
Mm.
Like he hasn't given enough people, and it's like, okay, people who are dedicated to the FOP don't like him. People who see a brown person, who see every brown person as a potential criminal, don't like him. But I think that there are enough people who are okay with what he's doing and with what he's promising to do, and who are actually sort of feeling safer in general,
Mm.
um, are gonna continue to support him, or at least give him rope.
Yeah, the narrative that the city is a burning hellhole and that it's less safe than it was before Krasner was elected is completely false. It isn't less safe, and there are unsafe things that happen. There are crimes that happen. Those crimes happen all the time, all over the place. It's not something that we've been able to engineer out of humanity. I'm mostly just curious about, like, that aspect of it. The aspect of it is, our are people, is the narrative, the white fright narrative, in any way correct, in that they're saying, oh, bunch of people just voted for crime. No, I don't believe it either, but also, you gotta give it a fair hearing. Is it in any way correct? I don't think so. I think
Well,
that,
so wait,
yeah.
wait, wait, wait. Check this out. You can go and look at the data that the district attorney's office publishes.
Mm-hmm.
They have a data lab. It's like
Yeah,
one
yeah.
second. The URL is data.philly.dao.com. And if you go there, you can look at the year-to-year statistics.
Mm-hmm.
And what those statistics show is that what you said is incorrect. Violent crime, or crimes that the district attorney's office classifies as violent, are actually still higher than they are today than they were when Larry Krasner took office.
Mm,
It's not a monumental spike, but they are not lower.
mm.
And that
Yeah,
is that is an undeniable truth that the district attorney's own numbers tell. Now,
but by
people
like what
people are
kind of
still on average
margins?
safe. What?
Or like what kind of margins? Like what's your frame of reference here? So I think there's a broader trend throughout society. I know that there is, that crime has gone down pretty consistently since like the 90s, like
Since
the early
Well,
90s, just
it's gone
broadly.
broadly gone down since the 90s, and also, well, broadly gone
And
down
so
since the
so what
80s, and
I guess what my
also there
question
was
is,
a spike that returned us to the highest
So it's about
levels
10%
after.
higher.
So there was
10% in what categories?
so
Violent crime,
violent crime.
as published.
That's
Crime
rape,
broadly.
murder,
Armed robbery.
assault, armed robbery, yeah, and anything involving physical intimidation, or physical contact. The violent crime numbers being at 10%, that's probably something around 300 total crimes a year, if I had to guess.
Yeah, that's about the difference.
Yeah.
And I mean, look, and I'm not saying that the city is unsafe. I'm just making it clear that crime is in fact higher. Is that Larry Krasner's fault,
In
or is it
in
the
in the
the
category
result
of
of nationwide
overall
trends?
violent crime, yes, it's 10% higher. In specifically murders, no, it's like 30% lower. In robberies, and like unarmed robberies, and things like that, I think it's also vastly lower, if I recall correctly. Um, yeah, it's all based on categories. If you look at crime overall, I'm pretty sure it's lower by a certain percentage. I don't have the numbers in front of me. You do. You can feel free to correct me if I'm wrong.
It is
Um,
as reported, all incidents of crime are higher at, as they are right now than at the start of Krasner's term.
hmm.
I was just looking at the chart. It's like it's more than 10%, but not a lot more than 10%.
Yeah,
And
but
look,
I think what James
I mean,
is saying is you're sort of speaking in aggregate of all types of
well, yeah.
crime. And I think if you talk about into like
Okay, well, if we
specific
just
crime,
talk
like
about
less
individual
murders.
crimes, like let's look at murder. I mean, the murder rate has undeniably gone down, and that's a great thing. Now, you know, is like people should feel safer that less people are getting murdered, but then by and large, it was very specific groups of people who were the victims of most of these murders. So if you weren't a member of those groups, you're not really worried about it either way. And so, it's your safety in terms of the type of crime going on is sort of irrelevant in that regards.
Well,
But and there's other factors at play too. Like for instance, because we had so much murder and mayhem, our hospitals got really, really good at patching people up,
hmm.
like disturbingly so. And I wish they didn't have all that practice, but some percentage of that decline is people simply not dying after something terrible has happened to them. I
It's
mean, it's a good chunk of it is still, just there being less terrible things happening. But, there are a whole bunch of causes and a whole bunch of reasons for the why it's going down.
Well,
And look, like I
also,
agree with you.
also, it's systemic the other direction too, from the supportive direction. You know, Krasner's conviction integrity unit has released like huge numbers of people who were wrongly convicted and removed from their neighborhoods. I think it was like 4 or 5 thousand cases, something like that. Of
There was like 90 people or 90 murder convictions, maybe.
I don't
I
know
don't
about
know.
the murder specifics. I know that it covers like all kinds of things, including drug convictions and possession and firearms. Um, uh, Returning people to their neighborhoods, not charging them with exorbitant uh, fees to have their case heard, or dragging them out of their neighborhood and out of their productivity, also improves those statistics. You know, you lower crime through systemic changes, not just through tough on crime.
The conviction integrity unit exonerated 53 people
Okay,
total. Just 53. My numbers were way off.
okay.
Per the information published by the DA.
For what
So,
it's worth, though, I do think, like, crime may be up. We can grant that statistically. That's fine. I think the thing to consider is a lot of this is happens in much broader terms. Like, I don't think Larry Krasner has any control really over the number of crimes he commits based on how many people he can put in jail. Like, those two things are not as directly linked in my mind. I think, for better or for worse, Larry Krasner is trying to initiate reform policies that needed to happen for the perspective of cash bail. Whatever work he's done to get innocent people out of jail, even if it's only 53, that's still 53, lives that are restored to some degree, and justice
oh, I mean,
is served
absolutely.
for them. But I think the issue is he's doing these things in the role that he's capable as DA and as a prosecutor, but he isn't able to control the other side of the outcome, which is the corrections department. Like, the time that people serve locked up in cages instead of getting like actual meaningfully reformative treatment and stuff, especially for nonviolent crimes and stuff like that. But even with violent crimes, like sometimes people literally really just need therapy and a little bit of support, and they can get their lives back on track. And I think without that aspect of the justice reform, there's going to be shortfalls, in what you would view the DA might be doing. I think we need to be more like holistic in the way that we
And
approach the issue.
to my previous point, big promises are sometimes generational in nature, and not achievable in uh, what has it been? Even 15 years of holding an office, especially if you're the one trying to do them. But
No, Krasner's been here for not even 8 yet. So
so yeah, and
he could use some more time. We'll see.
yeah,
I mean, he's getting 4 more years,
yeah,
so
and
Right.
you know
and
we'll see how
so
it works out.
bigger point is, I always chafe at the throwaway lines that get tossed around, in these spaces, especially after elections like this. And I think it's valuable to investigate what you're talking about, like we have today. Um, just acknowledging the time, it's 11:12. I don't want to hold anybody here longer than they have time for. This is a great discussion, and I really appreciate you guys. And if you're watching this live or watching it on replay, feel free to set it aside and watch more later if you want. It's just four guys talking about politics. So I don't know if any of you are still here, but I think these are important topics. Um, I think it's important to examine these things. Tim's brought up a bunch of good points about Krasner and the kind of narrative of Krasner. Is there any validity to the right wing kind of throwaway lines? Yeah, there's maybe a little bit of validity to there's more crime. I interestingly wanted to bring up that I interestingly saw the cop who left the force, left Philadelphia PD after doing some whistleblower stuff, supporting Krasner in some of these online spaces, and giving a counter narrative to Dugan's narrative that Krasner just loves criminals. Which, by the way, if any of us runs for office, and if anybody watching this decides to run for office, and if anybody like in charge of campaigns or anything decides to watch this, I'll give you a free tip. I don't care what side you're on. I don't care what you represent. Having sour grapes for your opponent after you lose is not a good way to go about doing anything. Dugan's statement in his concession speech was abhorrent and like instantly lost all any amount of like respect or goodwill that I had for him as somebody who was legitimately trying to change the narrative on crime in Philadelphia. Um, but regardless of that, I what I've seen from working with criminologists, and talking to criminologists, seeing Krasner talk with criminologists and talk with people going through the justice system, seeing how he talks about people that are in the justice system, seeing how he talks about the things that he finds wrong with the justice system. I can't find fault with any of the stuff that he talks about, other than it's not a radical enough change for my taste, but he does seem to be trying to affect a change in the very specific Philly justice system that, you know, did suffer many generations of corruption and not working well. I think, Tim, I think we talked about this last week, that it's unquestionable that the 80s and 90s and even some part of the 70s threw so many people at the justice system that judges just didn't have time to actually properly hear cases anymore.
We talked about it at some length, and I mean, so my objections to Krasner are more based on his approach in doing things. Ideologically, I don't disagree with the majority of what he wants to do. It's just his implementation has a lot of unintended consequences. So, I think everybody sitting here in this chat, wants to see reform in regards to our drug laws and how we treat people suffering from addiction. In Philadelphia, we've basically de facto decriminalized all manner of, possession of drugs, basically, and sort of cordoned off a part of the city that's a free for all where you can do basically whatever you want in terms of your drug use openly. And, locking people up isn't gonna solve that problem, but by not enforcing any laws without having a holistic approach like Chris is talking about with some type of harm reduction thrown into the mix, in my opinion, the suffering inflicted on that population has been vastly increased. And I mean, I don't think you could find really anybody who lives in that neighborhood who's going to say that things are better down there than they were 8 years ago in any way.
My
Well,
office is down there. I would say things are better than they were 4 years ago.
well, I do
But what
think
about 8 years ago?
I
No,
do think it's I do think it's worth pointing out that when people the solution to this problem is safe injection sites, and part of the problem is people don't want that in their neighborhood because
Not in my
they
backyard.
don't understand what it is
Exactly.
exactly, and it's
Exactly.
NIMBY shit, and so again, it's like whether or not Larry Kraft, like what do we do? Do we just throw the people in jail because they're inconvenient? Or can we build a safe injection site instead of having just an unsafe injection site? Like these are solvable problems, but they need to be solved through the right channels. And I think you're kind of getting at
They
that
need
to
to be
some
solved
extent.
together, though.
right.
That's the
Yes,
key.
Yeah,
yeah.
and unfortunately, I think there is an attempt, or was an attempt, with the previous mayor to solve them together, but the previous mayor had neither political will nor internal will to accomplish it. And even now, I see on the six ABC conservative people commentating. Oh, is actually I saw on Kensington Facebook group, Fishtown Facebook group, people asking guest of the show and writer for Philly Mag, Victor Fiorello, has an interview coming up with the commissioner, the police commissioner, and people were asking questions like, um, is he going to do anything, or can he do anything about, people using drugs in Kensington, in the area that you say is, there's no laws enforced. And
Well, I mean, not no laws, just no drug laws
no drug
enforced.
laws are enforced. And one of the people said, and I didn't respond because it's not my audience. But one of the people said, I'm tired of. I don't think police should just be running around giving Narcan to the same 15 people every couple of days. And I wanted to, like, strangle that person and be like, yeah, that's what a safe injection site is for, dumbass. You get them off of the street and you put them in the hands of somebody who can watch them and give them Narcan in case they start to crash. And since they feel safe, they'll keep coming back and they'll listen to those people and ask them for help and probably get into a drug program. And no, this idea of forcing everybody into a drug program or into jail doesn't work, because you can't force people to get rid of an addiction. And anybody who's ever had any positive encounter with addiction knows that you cannot force people out of addiction. They have to take ownership of it themselves. um
Honestly, it's you whether or not people take ownership or you try to force them or not, you just have to accept that addiction is a really fucking hard thing to beat, and that whether or not people are motivated, the success ratio is extremely low.
right.
Yeah, but like to what like you said, Tim, about just like like, oh man, I'm so sick of watching this guy get Narcan. It's like, oh wait, wouldn't it be cool if there was a service to do that? So that like it.
I don't
I mean,
think I don't think I don't think Tim
I
is
don't oppose
anti
safe injection
SIS. Yeah.
sites.
No, I'm
I
not. That's not what I meant.
I
I'm
suggest there be
saying
one on UPenn's campus.
Right. Yeah.
I think that's
no.
the
I
ideal
mean
place to
the
put it.
people in general who are like, I don't, I'm sick of seeing people get Narcan on the street in Philadelphia, and it's like they don't have to be on the street when they do it. You know?
Yeah, I mean, also like, just from a strictly Republican standpoint, like it's pretty fucking cheap to Narcan people. It's pretty expensive to deal with their corpse.
Right.
Right.
It's also expensive to put them in jail. Like,
Right.
Yeah, no, I
That's
mean,
more.
look,
That's the most expensive of the three.
yeah. It's like
Look,
what
like,
do they say about like the homeless problem? Oh, what should we should arrest all the homeless people? You mean we should house them in the most expensive way humanly possible? Like,
The
I mean,
people who own stock in CCP would say yes.
Yeah,
well,
of course, because they own stock in a company that provide.
private prisons. Oh God.
Yeah, so this isn't on the list, but just briefly to touch on Utah, Utah is setting up and has asked the Trump administration to advise on creating a site outside the city limits of Salt Lake to place the homeless population inside, essentially the entire homeless population of Salt Lake City into housing, but they're not allowed to leave. They're
To jail.
they're not allowed.
Right. It's called jail.
So yeah, a jail. um,
why is-
yeah, it's not like the I believe it was the governor of Utah said something along the lines of, "Well, people always want to house the homeless, and we're going to provide them housing." And it's so close to the point, but so far. Um,
this is what we get for giving Mormons a state.
um, I did want to talk about two things. The UPS flight 2976 that crashed yesterday. That seems to be a perhaps unavoidable tragedy. I don't want to I don't want to downplay the tragic nature of it. It is very upsetting that a plane had a failure and three people on board the plane died, and so far at least four have been confirmed to have died on the ground. Um, I don't know that as the technology for flying becomes more ubiquitous, and flying things places becomes more routine, that this was in any way avoidable. The tragedies that we've had in air travel and even in air freight over the past 20 years, yes, they've been more frequent, but they haven't been necessarily avoidable from the macro perspective of, if you're going to start carrying more and more people and more stuff through the air, you're going to have more and more accidents. Um,
Yeah, I would argue some of it would be avoidable as an autistic person who likes trains. Like, avoidable. So I think what you're speaking to is the avoidability of like accidents happening as volume increases. Like
mm,
we accept a certain amount of death from like cars. Like why the fact that everybody is allowed to just own a 2 ton like steel object that can travel at 100 miles an hour with the amount of certification it takes to operate that machine legally is not a good ratio
no.
in my mind in this country, or really anywhere. There's just too many cars. They're bad. We should have more trains, I think is my point.
All right, so I have a view on this thing. Last week, my wife and I went down to New Orleans for Halloween. I fucking love that town. God, I love that town. When we flew back on Monday, and the first flight that we were supposed to be on actually got canceled because of maintenance issues. And they had to like get us another plane. We got on the plane, and like this whole time I'm thinking about, you know, the TSA guys that are cranky because they have to deal with people and they're not getting paid, and the air traffic controllers, people are like calling out sick because they're not getting paid, so there's fewer of them. And then you look at the increase in air accidents. Um, and this is going to sound like a weird stretch. I'm big into naval toys. I think the Navy has the coolest toys in the world. Um, there has never been a nuclear accident on an American submarine, aircraft carrier, or destroyer, or like any of the nuclear vessels that the Navy's had, as far as in any way that can be found or documented, there's never been a nuclear accident. And that's because when the Navy started their nuclear program, the thing that was more important than anything else was safety. When you have things like air travel, where the most important thing now is how many bodies can we squeeze onto a plane? How can we maximize the space for profit, tickets, um, use the least amount of fuel, um, use the smallest crews, blah, 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 blah. Because profit is becoming more and more and more an issue than air safety, that's why you start to have, like with this flight, they'd said it was like a 34-year-old plane and it was on its third flight of the day. And so you start having these mechanical things that every time they're used go through a great amount of stress, but the turnaround is happening in such a way that maintenance becomes a trick. So you have maintenance being an issue, you have the human factor of being an issue between air traffic control and fatigue and crews and all of that. So I think as we're seeing this ramp up of accidents, I think I don't think it's just because there's more travel. I think there's more travel, but I think there's also less of a focus on not having accidents happen. And I think unless there's an adjustment in the way air travel is or air traffic is approached, um, that's going to be a problem. And it's getting pointed out by all of the things surrounding the shutdown.
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know, man. The way you're talking about it, you're sort of making it sound like capitalism isn't such a great idea to begin with.
I've come to the conclusion that it might have a problem. It might have issues. I don't know. And I know that you're being sarcastic. It
I'm not.
but like the pisser, right, is that when you look at, so technology in general can be an absolutely wonderful thing. It can be an amazing thing. Um, I look forward to, like, a goal of my life. I think eventually we are going to move from a war economy and a consumption economy to a civilization where improving life and humanity and the species and the planet is actually going to be the goal. It's not going to happen in my lifetime, but like my objective is to help move that needle just a little bit, right? We could have very safe, very affordable, very streamlined and magnificent air travel. We could have, a rail grid like Europe does. There's all kinds of things that could happen, but they don't happen because they're not primarily profitable. And
Yeah.
I think what's slowly starting to happen is people are really getting the idea that, like, profit is not worth me having to work 3 jobs and not see my kid. Profit is not worth having planes drop out of the sky. Profit is not worth me buying this car, and every time I buy a car, 2 years after I buy it, it gets recalled. I think we're slowly starting to, as a nation overall, I think people are slowly starting to understand that that profit versus quality of life thing isn't quite working. It's happening slowly, but I feel like it's happening.
And I wanted to follow this up just quickly with questionably qualified, not Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy of the United States has been threatening for a couple of days now to quote unquote shut down the airspace of the United States if the federal budget shutdown continues. First of all, it's really important, and most people might not pick up on this, so I'm going to explain it to you folks that might be watching. Airspace and air traffic are two separate words for a very, very, very good reason. Airspace is the space above the country. That is a governable space. Air traffic is the stuff that moves through the air above our country. That is also a governable set of individuals and companies. If you shut down the air, use this thing. Sorry about that. So if you shut down the airspace, you shut down all of the traffic that can possibly go through the
Oh,
airspace.
There
yeah.
he is.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think I know. I think I know what he's getting at, James. I think you left us at airspace. The word
yeah. So
airspace, I believe.
yeah, I didn't leave the audience. I left you guys. I apologize for that. My
Oh,
computer keeps locking. But yeah, so airspace is all of the traffic. Is everything, the whole space. Air traffic is commercial and individuals that fly through that airspace. By saying airspace, Sean Duffy is threatening to essentially declare martial law above the country. If you threaten to shut down air traffic or limit air traffic or control air traffic for safety, that's one thing. If you threaten to shut down airspace, that's a different thing entirely. That would be like saying you're not allowed to drive anyone, no matter what. You have to seek special permission from the government to drive. These it's a very big and important distinction, and I hope you're all aware of that. And I
so
don't.
do you think that that's an intentional, like, we're ruling out that the individual is not just incompetent and doesn't understand and
Right.
misspoke, right?
He's dumb is what it's like, you know, Trump bitching about the president of Puerto Rico. Um I think Duffy meant traffic but said space.
Yeah.
And has there been any effort to correct that?
No.
Like, that's
Uh,
see, that's the part that
But all of the cabinet members are idiots. Like there's
I mean, so
Bessett's the only one that's not dumb.
Duffy's
He's just crooked.
yeah, Duffy's bio is BA in marketing and a JD. He served as district attorney for county in Wisconsin. He was in Wisconsin's. He was one of Wisconsin's House reps, and then he left Congress to deal with medical issues in the family. I don't know what those
God
medical
damn, I
issues.
miss Elaine Chow.
and just for
Which is
just for just for a sense of scale for anybody that doesn't fully grasp the how significant the difference between space and traffic is. One of the first things you do in a war is shut down the opponent's airspace if you're able, or more particularly if you're the United States, because we have the three largest air forces in our military. Um, like that's the difference in severity that you're talking about.
Right. So I don't. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if this is just marketing speak going reaching for the biggest word, or incompetence, or intentional misspeak so that they can segue into locking down the country. But some people have caught on to this. Some people have been like, yeah, no, that would cause me to definitely try and leave the country. um, Tell you what, if they shut down the airspace, you're not leaving the country unless you know somebody like me with a boat. Yeah, you're just not. If they shut down the airspace, you're screwed. Even if you live on a border, it's really easy to close a land crossing border, and they do it all the time for various reasons. So, um, yeah. Anyway, I'm not sure. I just wanted to touch on that. I don't know what you guys' opinions are on that are. I think Tim, you're the only one that hasn't really voiced an opinion on that, but
God damn, is Sean Duffy fucking stupid?
okay.
And I mean, no, my only comment on it was I I fucking miss Elaine Chow, and I can't believe I have to say that out loud. But at least for his first term, Trump managed to find a competent Secretary of Transportation,
Right.
and that
Well, that was
like
that was a problem. You can't have competent people in a fascist state.
well, I mean, after she resigned following the whole January 6th thing or whatever, yeah, she wasn't getting invited back in.
Right.
So no, but Jesus Christ. The dude's an idiot. He misspoke.
Yeah.
Is the undeniable outcome.
Yeah.
I
But
hope,
I mean, even for Secretary of Transportation, that
but
is
like
fucking stupid.
nobody has like mentioned it to him. Like nobody in that man's life has gone like, "Hey man, like, did you mean traffic or space?" Because that's a big like nobody's had that conversation with him since this has happened yet. Can we get a little clarification? I mean, I
Well,
obviously I don't
this is
I
the
don't
this
I
is
don't realistically expect anybody in this administration
it's one
to
of
be accountable for
this is one of
anything.
the things I hate about inside the Beltway media and reporters is like, yeah, you can accept that answer on its face and then just report on it, but you should probably ask the follow-up question and just be like, even if you're going to get a bad answer, you should ask the follow-up question.
Yeah, please ask the follow-up question.
Anyway, my computer's trying to shut down again. I did try and repair this, but it apparently didn't work. It worked for an hour and a half, so that's good. But I appreciate you guys jumping in today to talk electoral politics and the results of the election. Any last thoughts, Rick?
Nope.
Any last thoughts, Chris?
I agree with Tim. Sean Duffy is an idiot.
Any last thoughts, Tim?
I would just like to repeat that Sean Duffy is an idiot,
Okay.
and
I appreciate the that.
How did we end up with the only political podcast where everybody ended up agreeing with something at the end?
Beautiful, really.
well, Sean Duffy has brought us together.
Sean Duffy. That's the great thing about complete idiots. They can bring everyone together. At any rate, I really appreciate you guys for joining us today. It was quite a good episode, as I suspected leading into it. But I think it's a great example of I think we did successfully analyze things that we talked about, and may have even changed conclusions in the course of analyzing those things that we talked about. And I think that's important. I think it's important that when you lose an election in a shellacking, like Republicans across the nation did, the leader of your party shouldn't be looking to suspend electoral politics. They should probably examine their conclusions and figure out why they lost in a shellacking, instead of trying to figure out how to rig future elections. But that's neither here nor there. Hopefully, we will have a 2026 midterm election, and we will have punditry that figures out what people actually want, and we will have. I'm just being too hopeful, aren't I? Yeah.
Either we're either going to have midterms that are a complete turnaround from what American politics has been, or we're not going to have them.
Mm.
I honestly think that's what we're looking at. I think that the GOP Heritage Foundation in particular are going to do pretty much everything that they can to keep midterms from happening. If midterms actually happen, there's a whole lot of heads that are going to roll, a whole lot of heads. And so I think the people that wear those heads are going to try to keep them from happening, which then turns into a whole other brand of anarchy and a whole other brand of resistance and a whole other brand of ugly, honestly. So I think if they happen, there's going to be a seismic shift. Um, but I know that they're going to try to keep it from happening, or at least that's my suspicion.
Any objections from the other wings of this party?
I
Uh,
mean, you know,
I I haven't looked at all of the races that are up for election, but I do suspect that the general trend of negative response to what's been going on with the federal government since Trump was reelected is going to probably drive big turnout, as you could see from the results of last night's elections that had historic turnout in many places. Um, especially, especially for the time or for where it is in the election cycle. Immediately after a presidential election is usually the lowest turnout. And from what I've understood, there's been records broken in a lot of places. So that's good to see. It's good to see people getting engaged and giving a shit about, especially local politics. Man, local politics is a lot more important than people realize.
Tim, you were gonna say.
oh yeah, there will be midterm elections because elections are controlled by the states and the federal government can't stop us. We will have them either way. Whether or not they're respected, that's a different story, but they will happen.
All right. Well, thanks so much for joining us on that bombshell. I'm gonna go to the one up of me, and I'm gonna outro the show. You guys can stick around. If I do disappear, feel free to hang out. I will be back in like 1 second. It just keeps my computer keeps talking. So thank you for joining me again. And I will talk to you all in a minute. And thank you to my audience for joining me this week. We're gonna take a break from shows for a bit. We will probably be coming back with a series set around the marine and maritime environment here in Philadelphia. Before we come back for more coffee break chats, but we will be sure to come back to you if any important things happen in politics or the arts in Philadelphia, and try and keep you up to date and abreast, and also provide unique perspectives that don't often get represented in mass media. As you can see, we had a variety of perspectives on this show. We try and have a variety of perspectives every time we talk with people. And I'm open to hearing from pretty much anybody. Like I've said before, that my line of you being able to talk ends when you think my life is invalid. Before that, we can have all the arguments you want. So, if you'd like to argue with me or just talk with me, please get in touch. Feel free to reach out via our Patreon. You can subscribe to our Patreon for as little as $1 a month. And you can also check out our YouTube, our Facebook, our Twitter, our Blue Sky. We're no longer on Twitter. We are on Twitch and Blue Sky, and all those places we reach out, and Instagram as well, actually, and all those places we reach out with news and current events, and try and keep people informed. So have a great rest of your week, everybody. Hope everything goes well for you, and tune in next time. If you subscribe, you'll get a notification when we're about to go live the next time. See y'all later.